Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 15 of Import Nights, the review series for GranTurismo's very strong JDM selection. And although the majority of these are conventional 2+2 seater, two-door coupes, the vast majority of them at least, there are some which do break that formula and kind of cross between sports coupes, but then more over into the sports car category as well. And within that category of JDM pure sports cars, this is one of the leaders of that category, especially in terms of popularity. And the car is the Honda S2000. One of the most popular, one of the most loved, and one of the most respected two-door convertible sports cars ever made. Hugely loved. It has masses upon masses of fans, both in its stock and tuned forms. There are a huge variety of S2000s on GranTurismo, and I believe, I may well be wrong, but I believe there are actually more aftermarket tuner versions of the Honda S2000 than any other tuner car on GranTurismo. Just think of all the different companies you've got. You've got AEM, you've got Opera Performance, you've got Mugen, you've got Spoon, and a variety of others. It's an extremely popular car to upgrade, and for good reason. It's an excellent car. Now, for the purpose of the series, the particular model of the S2000 that we're going to be featuring is the premium model, which is a slightly newer shaped vehicle, and it does have a slightly larger engine. It's a 2.2 litre. You can turbocharge this particular model up to a very impressive 520 horsepower, which, unlike many other Japanese import cars, I would actually say that is a pretty decent amount for the S2000. You could always say more would be nice, which of course it would, but 520 is pretty high, considering that other vehicles which deserve far more than that don't have that much more, like your Evos, your Imprezas, your Silvias, and various others. So 520 horsepower, incidentally peaking at 9,000 RPM for peak power. As far as torque, it does put out significantly less, not surprising for a VTEC, 314 foot-pounds, and even said torque arrives at a very high RPM, 8,500, so unsurprisingly, this is a car that loves to be worked hard. You need to rev it high and really work through the gearbox to get the best out of the S2000. Much like many VTEC models, it loves to be thrashed and works best when it is doing so. As far as the weight, it does weigh a little bit more than, say, an Integra, mainly due to the fact that it is rear-wheel drive, and that does add a little bit of extra weight due to the extra mechanicals, but still, 1,047 kilos in the case of this particular model is not bad at all. As far as horsepower per tonne, you're looking at just under 500, which is very good, and the PP fully tuned is pretty high, 547, but not necessarily too high. Now, I would, as I say about a lot of vehicles, be very, very careful about how high a PP you decide to race this car at, because to say it has potential really is an understatement, but at the same time don't push it too far, because the S2000 is not a race car. It may feel like one sometimes, but you need to remember this is a road-going sports car, so although it certainly feels very good, and it is, it's only going to be really, truly effective up to a certain point, and 547, I would say, is not so much. It's not ridiculously high, and it's certainly quick at that level, but you can get so many other extremely competent cars at that level, you're going to struggle under certain circumstances. And one of the ways that you would usually struggle in an S2000, especially against other cars in this series, like your Skylines, RX-7s, Supras, etc., is in terms of straight line power. Now, we've already said that 520 horsepower in the case of this car is pretty good. It's a relatively compact car aerodynamically. It's got a very small front end area that usually helps with top speed. It's pretty light, which is never going to hurt. It's got enough torque, not necessarily a lot, but it gets the job done, and a pretty decent amount of power. So the question is, do you get good performance from that, or is this one of those vehicles which just kind of peters off in that regard? Because some of the S2000s do. you have to choose them carefully. Some of them, for instance, cannot be turbocharged, so you do need to make sure which one you buy according to your needs and your wants. In the case of this car, the performance is good. The top speed is around 225 or more under its own power, no NOS, no draft. Obviously with those things it will go even quicker. The acceleration is good, and the handling, although a lot more playful than your average, say, Evo or Scooby, can certainly get the job done. It can be a very sharp, focused car when you need it to be, but at the same time, by changing a few settings, it can become a lot more playful. It can make a really good drift car, as many people know, and it's a pretty nice car to drive for driving feel, and often games don't really transmit that enough. You can drive a car fast, but that doesn't necessarily make it enjoyable. Some cars can be very, I would say, clinical. Often German performance cars feel that way to me. Stuff like the Nissan GTR, that can feel like a very clinical car, especially in its R35 form. This car isn't like that. It's got a lot more passion. In fact, it's got an amount of character and passion which you wouldn't usually find in a Japanese performance car. They're often very efficient, but don't necessarily have as much character as, say, an Italian car, which is much louder and much more visually striking in general. The S2000, though, does have a very European feel to it, and I think it's all the better for it. It has kind of a snake-like look to the front end with the headlights and that large snake-like mouth, and it's a very good-looking car, it has to be said. It's a relatively simple design, and that's something which Honda is actually very good at, making cars which are simple, but at the same time look really good. So overall, if you're looking for a decent all-round sports car for 38,000 credits, the S2000 is a great one to go for. But that's it for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.